We'll call the regular meeting in the New Ulm Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, August 8th, 2017, 8 a.m. to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. We do have a quorum. So go on item number 2, the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Any discussion on any of them? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3 from the New Ulm Economic Development Corporation Coordinator regarding activities during the month of July 2017. Brian?
Brian Toll, New Ulm Economic Development Corporation. You have my July activity report in your packet, and I will highlight a couple of things. First thing, a New Ulm businessman had a potential client who wanted to contract for work, or wants to contract for work, and would require the New Ulm businessman to build a new facility needing 7 to 10 acres. We provided information on the Airport Industrial Park. And then we had follow-up with Project Curl. If you remember from last month, Project Curl was a hog processing facility that was looking for a new site in southern Minnesota or northern Iowa. New Ulm has been excluded from their short list, and they have chosen a site on the interstate in southern Minnesota, which being on the interstate with that size of a facility is understandable. And then finally, I would point out that in the strip mall out by Walmart, we'll be getting a new shoe store called Shoe Sensation. And they, according to the mall owner, they carry name brand shoes. I'd never heard of it. It's a chain out of, I think, Ohio. Any questions?
Are they going to carry men's shoes?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to accept the report.
I'll make the motion to approve the report.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4A, conduct a hearing and consider resolution approving the sale of land located at Lot 1, Block 2, 5th North Street, 1st Edition, according to the Minnesota Statute 469.105, Subdivision 2. Heather?
All right, I'll just give you a brief overview. As you're aware, the EDA was contacted by a representative of S&P Development LLC, offering to purchase the remaining 20.34 acres in the Milford Heights subdivision, Lot 1, Block 2, 5th North Street, 1st Edition, for the development of single, twin, and townhouse types of housing. The purchaser presented an offer to the EDA, which was accepted. We had the first amendment to the purchase agreement to delay the closing date from July 15th to on or before August 15th, 2017. Today we present to you a second amendment to the purchase agreement, revising the legal description as well as including the required statute language. Primary issues, alternatives to consider. The EDA has determined the sale of Lot 1, Block 2, 5th North Street, 1st Edition to S&P Development LLC to be in the best interests of the city and its people, and that the transaction furthers its general plan of economic development. The EDA includes as a goal and objective in its 5-year plan to continue to be an active participant in the local housing industry, including promoting affordable housing and economic development within its jurisdiction. The EDA has authorized 2 housing studies in recent years, one in 2012 and most recently in 2017. Both studies indicate a need for moderate to higher priced single-family homes and attached types of housing such as twin homes and townhouses. Additionally, employers in the community have expressed difficulty in recruiting an adequate workforce, citing a lack of housing options. Realtors in the community have expressed that there is a very limited supply of housing stock across all price ranges and housing types. S&P Development will finance and install the necessary infrastructure for the residential development. And so we're asking the EDA today to authorize staff to sign the second amendment to the purchase agreement, including the required language per the state statute. As attachments, you can see the original purchase agreement, Amendment 1, Amendment 2 that we're asking for authority to sign today, a preliminary plat map showing the rezoning that has been approved by the Planning Commission and City Council, proposed plan map for the remaining unplatted sections, plans for what the twin homes are being proposed, and the plans for the townhouses that they're proposing. And also, we received written correspondence from Mr. and Mrs. Romaine, and that's been included as well. So that concludes the overview.
Okay, thank you. It's a
I think
public.
just want to
Right, go
note
ahead.
the map that you have that shows the R1s on Warhoo Avenue. It has R1 on both sides. It's actually R2 on the western section. The map drawer upper didn't get that one quite right. So where it does show R2 on the bottom, just extend R2 all the way to the Old County Road, or 7th Street, 7th North Street. That's error on the map.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Anybody like to be heard? Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Tom Romaine. I live at 644 Fender Drive with my wife Deanne. I'm looking for some additional information on this sale. When the hearing notice appeared in the paper on July 25th, it spoke that the terms and conditions of the sale would be available for the public to look at. I requested that, was told it was in the purchase agreement. It was not in the original purchase agreement. An amendment was made, the second amendment to the purchase agreement, that alludes to the grantee should develop the property to residential use and includes single-family dwellings, twin homes, townhomes, and other residential structures in the property as allowed by the property zoning classification, and goes on to say some other stuff. And then it says that it refers to a development agreement. So the conversation that has taken place in front of the Planning Commission, the City Council, has alluded to the fact that one of the permitted uses in R3 is apartments, but that would not take place on this particular site. But I have not been able to find anything in writing, nor has anything been provided by the ETA, the Planning Commission, or the City Council to say exactly what the terms and conditions are. Okay, and that's my first comment. My second comment is that I'm assuming that the date of conveyance is August 15th. Would that be correct, Mr. Hippert?
I believe
is
that's the intended closing date.
Yeah.
That's my understanding, correct?
Pardon me?
I believe that's the intended closing.
Okay, so the closing date would be the date of conveyance.
Yes.
Okay. What I'm looking for is the plans and specifications that the developer has provided to the city. Has that been made to the public?
May I speak, Mr. Chair? I believe that to the extent the statute requires this, those
Then they have to be at the date of conveyance.
that were discussed by Ms. Bregel as a preliminary matter here. They're included in the packet. It includes the preliminary plat. It includes the sketches for the development of the balance of the area that would be purchased. So they're not required to complete everything at this stage. I think they need to be able to present.
Well, I'm just looking for a simple statement that says twin homes, triplexes, quads, townhouses, but not apartments. And so far, my impression of that is it's all trust me. And the way this process has gone, I have little trust in the EDA and the Planning Commission and the City Council in this process.
Well, as part of the plans and specifications, they're not obligated to say no apartments. I think that is something that has been clearly stated as not being their intention. I don't think that that's the way that the city is entering into this, but they're not obligated to state that.
Mhm. Okay, would that be included in a covenant to be tied to the property when the EDA does convey the land?
No, it's not in the covenants, no. The covenants would be the same as that appear in the Second Amendment to the purchase agreement.
Yeah, well, without the reassurance that there would not be apartments on there and some sort of documentation, I can't support this sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think in answer to Mr. Romaine, what we have presented to you and also to the public in the agenda would constitute the plans and specifications. As noted, the R1 and areas that are rezoned would restrict it to single-family dwellings. The R2 would restrict it to twin homes, and they have supplied, the developer has supplied, pictures of what a twin home looks like. Okay? And as far as the R3, they have also submitted what their intent to build, which is townhomes, and it shows the floor layout of their proposed townhomes. One of the findings that the EDA would need to make is that you would approve the plans and specs that are submitted to you, which are townhomes, twin homes, and single-family dwellings. That information then would be carried forward, and a development agreement would be created based upon the proposed project, which the EDA would have approved the plans and specifications. It's the development agreement that then basically says who's going to pay for what and how it will be developed. And so this is a process, and the first step in that process is to hold a hearing, review the plans and specs, approve the plans and specs if they meet your acceptance, and make your findings, authorize the signing of the Second Amendment, and then go through the rest of the process of development agreement and closing, et cetera, et cetera. So, although we can't offer at this moment any satisfaction to Mr. Romaine because that has not yet happened. The EDA has not yet approved the concept of R1, R2, R3, and they have not yet approved the plans and specifications as submitted. So right now, we don't have that assurance for Mr. Romaine. In 30 minutes, we may. Because whatever you approve is what the developer has to build. And that's part of the state statute. And the state statute says if they don't approve, or if they don't develop it as required, based on the findings of the EDA, they're subject to giving the land back. So that's the assurances.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
And Brian, just to reiterate too, if the developer were to acquire this land and subsequently try to sell it, and say a potential buyer would want to come in and build apartments, the EDA would need to offer their consent for that situation to occur as well. So it's not simply this particular proposed development that we're going to consider, but if they were to transfer title to a potential other developer and their purposes were to build apartment buildings, the EDA would still have the opportunity to interject itself and to stop that situation from occurring.
Not even necessarily the EDA, but the development agreement, which is signed and agreed to, we would be contacting the city attorney's office and saying, that's not what was given, and then attorney's office would initiate the
But-
stoppage of that, I would assume.
Yeah, but
Even under statute, we have that requirement of our consent for the next 12 months. Isn't that
no,
correct?
I think there's some confusion about that. The consent, as Brian was stating, certainly applies to any sale by the developer within the first year. That's something, there's a blanket that they can't convey any of these lots without the consent of the EDA. And I think what's anticipated is as the residences would be constructed and an occupant wants to buy them, they would apply for the consent, it would be signed off on the deed, and that would be what the intention is here. If, on the other hand, they were going to sell 7 lots and flip them to somebody who might want to put up an apartment house, that's not consistent with what the intention is here, and I think that's something within a year that could be stopped. But beyond that, without any one-year time limit, there are additional covenants that run with the land that require them to use the property for the purposes designated. And in the second addendum to this purchase agreement, it indicates it's to be used for single-family residences, twin homes, and townhomes, period. It doesn't say anything about apartments. So,
Tom Romaine again. That sentence goes on to say, or other residential structures on the property as allowed by the property zoning classification.
that's correct.
So, and
That's
that
correct.
would include apartments, if it went beyond that year and if he decided to sell it at that point. That's why I asked about, would there be a covenant limiting the developer or that property in perpetuity to be limited to twin homes, townhomes, single-family dwellings, triplexes, quads, whatever, but not apartments, in the development agreement or in the plans and specifications that the developer gave to the E EDA.
Well, subdivision 4 of the state statute 469-105 says that if the sale is going to go forward, it must be made on the authority's terms and conditions. And if you wanted to include a term and condition that is not currently part of the any of the purchase agreement or the amendments, that there be the use be limited to single-family, twin homes, or townhomes, I think that's within the authority of this organization.
Anybody else like to be heard?
Mary Ellen Domeyer, 916 South Jefferson. I've sat through some of these meetings, and my understanding is the zoning is Zone 3, low density, which would not include apartment houses. So is there something that needs to be defined or clarified, perhaps just with that?
I'm not sure the extent to which that affects it. I think Mr. Schnobrick might be able to comment on that.
Dave?
Dave Schnobrick, Community Development Director. At its past meeting, the City Council adopted an amendment to our comprehensive plan, which took the area that is proposed to be rezoned to R3 and designated it as medium-density residential. And within a medium-density residential, the standards that apply is a structure no taller than 2 stories, that no more than 8 units per acre, and that it's intended to be a type of attached housing, twin homes, row houses, that type of development. So within our comprehensive plan, we have designated the property for those types of land uses. Now, underneath the comprehensive plan is the city's zoning ordinance and the city's zoning different categories that we have there. And those types of uses are permitted only in our R3 zoning district. So that's why we had to use that designation.
So what you're saying, there's no apartment buildings could be built up there anyway then?
Well, not with the
Without
current,
rezoning again?
well, without amending our comprehensive plan to allow it, yeah. I would agree with that.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard? Seeing none? Entertain a motion?
At this point, I think you'd be closing the public hearing.
Yeah.
And I just, while I'm speaking, if the EDA decides to move forward to approve the sale, it's important that whoever's making the motion include in it appropriate findings, that this sale would be consistent with the purposes of the public interest and also the aims and purposes of the state statutes that apply to economic development. And the statute authorizes a private sale on that basis, but I think you need to include findings, and we have some findings in the agenda as compiled by staff, but there needs to be findings in addition to the motion. But the first step would be to close the public hearing.
Okay. Entertain a motion, close public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
We got a motion, a second, close the public hearing. Any more discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. And at this time, would the next be a resolution, Roger?
Yes, I'm sorry, resolution.
And you could, as Mr. Hippert had noted, create any other special requirements. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, if this was the real issue, you could, remove or other residential structures as allowed by the property zoning classification. That is in there predominantly because single-family dwellings are pretty easy to understand, twin homes and townhomes, but as Mr. Schnobrecht pointed out, row houses weren't listed here, which are very close to townhouses, and so when you have a different name, but it still meets the requirements of that classification, it would be allowed. In this case, we weren't thinking apartments, we were thinking, the next best thing that comes down the road, and they call it whatever, group housing or something. But it's all single-family units, and it's not called townhouse. It's not listed here. So it was kind of a catch-all, as Mr. Schnobrecht pointed out, for the comprehensive plan regulated area and also the zoning ordinance, as far as an R3 is concerned. So you can, if you want to, restrict it in more detail, or not. But I think the controls are in the comp plan and the zoning ordinance and the development agreement to address that.
Okay, thank you. Being said, anybody want to tackle it?
I'll offer the resolution and waive the reading.
Find some of them.
Yes, based on the findings that it is serving the public interest. And I believe that the concerns raised by Mr. Romaine have been properly addressed through the development agreement and the amendment to the comprehensive plan.
So the resolution would include approving the sale of Lot 1, Block 2, 5th North Street, First Edition, and also the approval of the second amendment to the purchase agreement.
That is correct.
I'll second the motion.
We got a motion and a second off the resolution, waive the reading. Any more discussion? Seeing none. Heather, please call the roll.
Commissioner Brum?
Yes.
Commissioner Fix?
Yes.
Commissioner Yanni?
Yes.
Commissioner Schultz?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Heather and Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain due to potential conflict of interest.
All right. And President Schmitz?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5, from the EDA staff regarding administrative activities during the month of July 2017. Heather?
All right, we'll start with the Section 8 report. Note we had 94 vouchers on the program for the month of July. Housing assistance payments, disbursements from HUD exceeded payments from landlords by $2,856 for the month. Monthly administrative fee disbursements exceeded expenses by $320 for the month. Note the unaudited balances on pages 3 and 4 of your report. And note on page 5, we have 91 vouchers on the program as of August 1st with a waiting list of 70. And note we were able to issue 2 new vouchers during the month of July. Moving on to the public housing program, as of July 31st, program revenues have exceeded expenditures by about $2,900. July is the first month of our fiscal year. So we're starting over. Note on page 8 of the report, Broadway House has 1 vacancy with 41 on the waiting list. And on page 9, the family units are fully leased with 18 on the waiting list. Moving on to the EDA report on page 10, note revenue and expenditure status, cash assets of just over $76,000. Staff from the Minnesota Housing Partnership came to New Ulm to conduct their site visit for the Strengthening Rural Communities program. They noted they were very impressed with the amount of new housing activity we have happening in New Ulm. There's a lot of things in flux with the State Street apartments, with the possible Milford Heights land sale, the possible downtown apartment building that a lot of these things are pending, but it's activity nonetheless. And then a potential townhouse project that's in the works as well. So they were happy to hear all of that, and we will have a follow-up phone call later this month as I maybe know more a little bit about some of these things that are pending, just to give them an update. Any questions on that?
Anybody have any questions for Heather?
All right, we're just trying to determine what needs are being met, what needs aren't being met, and kind of narrow our focus for where to go from here. So until we have some of those answers, it's difficult to do that, but we'll keep plugging away. Moving on to the property rehabilitation loan program on page 11, note available funds of just over $264,000. The rental property fund report is on page 12. Cash assets of just over $75,000 there. And moving on to the Garden Terrace report, Garden Terrace has 87 units leased with 75 on the waiting list. They currently have 1 vacancy due to a turnover last month. They have no move-out notices pending for September. Note they just replaced the water softeners in both buildings. We had the option of refurbishing the existing water softeners or replacing them with new digital demand units, and we opted to go with the new digital demand units. We did the same thing a few years ago at Broadway House, and they're more efficient. They don't use as much water or salt, so it overall or over time we'll see some cost savings with that, with the new units. Any questions?
Are we getting any requests on the property rehab loan fund? Getting any activity there?
There wasn't any new activity during the month of July.
Has there been any in the last couple months? How much?
It's been kind of quiet. We've approved some loans, several months ago, 3-4 months ago, but it's been quiet since then.
Do we need to do another advertising thing to get word out again, or no?
We could if we wanted to.
That's quite a bit of money sitting there that people could be using.
Good. I guess the question comes up is, how bad does EDA want to sell, the property? You can reduce, we can consider reducing the price, to strike interest again. I think to advertise it at the same price that it currently is at, I don't know that it would, draw any.
We're talking about the commercial rehab loan
Rehab
program,
one.
Oh,
advertising that.
oh, my mistake.
Could the chamber do a little blast for you, or?
Yeah, I can check into that. I made a note of that. So.
I think we might pick up a little activity on the homes up there once all of this stuff gets settled and find out that there's more prospects or building being done. I think that'll help us too.
Hope so. I did have an inquiry from a realtor, showed a family both of the houses. They like them both. They're kind of debating which one they might want to purchase. They don't know yet if they qualify for the TIF. And there was a question on, and Nicole, you might need to help me out, if they purchased a house now and the EDA's been paying into the TIF, the principal balance now is lower than the original principal balance. So if they don't qualify for TIF, would they pay on the original balance or the current balance?
Yeah,
And-
that was the question, and we couldn't figure it out based on,
We're
You'd
still,
have to-
we're
you'd
still
have to
discussing
reassess.
that.
Yeah,
and we'll
that's
get
been
back
kind
to
of
you.
going around, so just,
You would have to reassess, I would anticipate, to go back to the original total, because the original total is not, that's not the balance right now. If this was a regular private sale, you would include that, what you've paid on your assessments.
Well, that ultimately, I mean, there's a purchase agreement that would be signed, and it's whatever terms are in that purchase
Yeah.
agreement. So,
It's not unusual for it to have a buyer assume remaining assessments. It would probably be,
I agree with that. I think the question is the amount that
Yeah.
they would be obligated to be paying.
Do we go back to
based
the
on
original
what,
amount?
yeah, how it was paid originally. Okay.
I mean, I guess I always thought if they didn't qualify for TIF, they don't reap the benefits of the TIF, so they would pay the original amount, but I guess, like the city attorney's saying, everything's open to negotiation in the purchase agreement, and the EDA approves the purchase agreement, so you'd have to agree to, if you wanted to agree to a lower amount. The other question I have is if they don't qualify for TIF and we don't yet know the street assessments for each property, the street's been put in, but we won't get that information until November. If we sold a house now, how would we determine if they don't qualify
There-
for TIF, how much they pay for the street?
Mr. Hibbert can probably explain that, but there's always a request that comes into City Hall and say, are you aware of any pending assessments? And then we sign off on it and say yes, and they'll be showing up in November and estimated to be X dollars, and that way the buyer is put on notice that there is something out there.
Okay.
So that's normal. That's not a.
So for the realtor who wants me to get back to him with what their assessments would be if they don't qualify for TIF, I really can't put a number to that right now, can I?
Not specifically to the penny, but I think this engineering department can give you a general number.
Okay. These are just questions that haven't come up before.
I'll
Well,
offer a
maybe,
motion to
maybe
approve
what we
the
should do
EDA
is-
activities.
I'll
Is
second.
have like 3 times a year, we should do advertising and promote our programs.
Mhm.
Whether it's rehab or whatever, to set them up so that maybe once a month we have one of our programs being advertised to keep it in the public's eye. Maybe that's the way to go with some of this stuff.
Okay, sounds good. We had a motion and a second, approved the agenda, or the report. Any more discussion?
We had a motion, I don't know if we got a second.
Yeah, we
I
did.
did.
Oh, sorry, missed that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 6A, consider participation in litigation to operating reserve offset. Heather?
All right, some of this is going to be before some of your time. When the EDA started their public housing program, they entered into a contract with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to administer that program. The contract stated that HUD would fund our program based on an operating fund formula. The formula is calculated based on rental revenue and utility expenses from the previous fiscal year. However, in 2011, Congress authorized HUD to require agencies with substantial operating reserves to use their reserves in place of receiving a subsidy. So back when the recession hit and we were under sequestration and Congress was trying to cut spending, we were one of the housing authorities that had significant reserves, and we did not receive any operating subsidy for the entire year of 2012 as a result of this decision by Congress. We typically receive around $60,000 a year for an operating subsidy in a normal year. As a result of the decision by Congress to pass this operating reserve offset of 2012, the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, or NARO, and the Public Housing Authorities Directors Association, or FADA, concluded that the offset was a breach of contract. They notified housing authorities on May 21st, 2012 that they would be filing a complaint on behalf of housing authorities that wished to be named as plaintiffs in a lawsuit against the federal government to recoup their losses. At that time, the EDA was presented information about the lawsuit that happened in September 2012, and at that time, the authority moved to decline participation in the lawsuit. I believe the fee to join the lawsuit at that time was $2,000 or $3,000. It would have had to be non-public or non-federal dollars, and those sitting on the board at the time didn't want to risk using EDA levy dollars or taxpayer dollars to join the lawsuit, with not knowing if they would be successful or not. They just chose not to join. Since that time, on January 18th, 2017, the United States Court of Federal Claims, or Claims Court, held that the operating reserve offset was a breach of the annual contributions contract between HUD and public housing agencies. The Claims Court found that the 2012 appropriation for operating subsidies should have been prorated for all housing authorities. So instead of just singling out housing authorities with significant reserves and not giving them any operating subsidy, they should have spread it out to all housing authorities to achieve the spending cut they wanted to achieve. Any housing authority that received operating subsidies that were less than 81.04% of its eligibility amount was entitled to money damages equal to the difference. So the lawsuit, the housing authorities that joined the lawsuit won, and they millions of dollars has been paid out to those housing authorities. Housing authorities that did not participate in the first lawsuit have been given the opportunity to join in a new lawsuit. The second lawsuit will be filed before November 18th, 2017, which is the end of the 6-year statute of limitations period for the filing of a breach of contract lawsuit against the United States. There is no guarantee that by joining the second lawsuit that we will receive money damages, because HUD does have the opportunity to appeal the claims court decision, and should they win, that would be bad news for housing authorities. The deadline for HUD to appeal is August 14th, 2017. And interestingly enough, the deadline for the EDA to join the lawsuit is August 15th, 2017. So this provides us with a few options. EDA could authorize staff to join the lawsuit. The EDA could authorize staff to join the lawsuit on August 15th, but only if HUD does not file an appeal on or before August 14th. Or the EDA could decline participating in the lawsuit. So those are the three options I'm presenting to you today. If we wish to participate in the upcoming lawsuit, the fee to join this round is $1,000. Again, it must be paid with non-federal funds, so I cannot use the public housing reserves or Section 8 funds to pay that fee, but it could be paid from the EDA fund. The estimated amount of money damages the New Ulm EDA is eligible to receive based on the claim court's January 18th, 2017 decision is roughly $53,000. And I'll note, if you recall, we recently passed our budget for the upcoming fiscal year, and that budget did project a year-end deficit of $14,500. In talking with our fee accountant, that deficit for this upcoming fiscal year, we are not unique. They're seeing that across the board with housing authorities as Social Security increases have remained fairly flat. Rent revenue has remained fairly flat. And we also are receiving a prorated operating subsidy, so our revenues are down, and that puts us in the position of having a projected deficit. So this would be a good time if we're able to find some additional money to supplement that that deficit, but I'll open up for discussion and questions.
Anybody have any idea?
I would, we have an expert sitting at our table in litigation. I would like to see what his opinion would be.
Well, thank you. And frankly, this is the first I've heard of any of this until I saw this on this agenda. I know nothing about the 2012 litigation. I don't know what communications have been presented to the EDA from any attorney representing new plaintiffs. Looking at this 2012 litigation, I don't know how many authorities might have been involved. Most of the time, that would have been sued out as a class action. And as a class action, anyone who would be similarly situated would get the benefit of the judgment. So there wouldn't be the need to join another lawsuit if it was a class action. Otherwise, that first lawsuit, they would have had to have literally named every single authority that was participating in it. Dozens, hundreds, I don't know. That's possible, but normally when you have a lawsuit of that size, you would do it as a class action. Unfortunately, we have a very limited window of time here in which to make a decision if this has got to be done by that date. I frankly don't know if the first lawsuit was not a class action and if this is what's necessary for other similarly situated authorities to get the benefit of this result. It's what you have to do. I don't know if it's a law office that's looking to make some more money by bringing in more people who would probably benefit anyway if the decision is upheld. So for $1,000, frankly, I think it's something that you might want to do. I don't know that I would hold off for this 24-hour window to see whether or not the federal government appeals. If they appeal, that doesn't mean they're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think that's a reason to not do it just because they're appealing. What the good news here is if they don't appeal, you've basically got the decision made. Whatever new court is going to hear this are going to have to adhere to the earlier decision, so it should be a slam dunk that way. And if it's appealed, this litigation, I'm sure, will just be put on hold, and they'll wait and see how that appeal turns out. So it's probably a wise investment to go ahead and do it. And again, without knowing a lot more about the whole background of the case and the new litigation, I can't really give you any more specific advice except to probably suggest that we would participate.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Question for you, Heather. You had mentioned that they've already paid out millions of dollars. It just seems odd to me that they would.
Well, I don't know if it's been paid out, but housing authorities will receive, it was in the millions. The
That's probably
housing
the amount
authorities
of the
that joined.
judgment, but it has
Okay.
not
Right.
been paid
Paid
out.
out.
Right,
That's
sorry.
some
That's a very good
clarification,
point,
because
yeah.
if they have the right to appeal, I could hardly see them already writing checks or whatever, so I just,
Yep.
okay.
Okay. Based on Roger's information, somebody like to make a motion? Proceed?
I'll make a motion to authorize the EDA, our staff to participate and fund the fee of $1,000 to participate in the action.
I'll second the motion.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6B, consider motion authorizing payment of the public housing program claims.
Make a motion authorizing payment of it.
I'll second it.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. No more business. Meeting adjourned.